Today I like to rant a little bit about a subject close to my heart. That is the problem about the prices of residential real estate. All over Europe they are going up and 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 up. And what do they say about population? Population is coming down, birth rates are dropping all the time, people are being encouraged to have more families because people don't want to have children. Now, a slight aside here about not having children. I will come back to this more on a future video, but basically I don't have a great deal of sympathy with people who've been children themselves in the past, which is probably all of us, and yet they don't want to give that to somebody else. This to me seems to be a little bit selfish opinion. I'm not talking about people who can't have children and would like to have children. I feel very sorry for these people. And I understand that people say, oh yes, human race very bad, let's limit numbers of peoples because this is better than for numbers of animals. To an extent that would be true, but what we need to do is to maximize the responsible use of resources, and even with a larger population we will have good results for sustainability of nature. When animals were going extinct very rapidly in the past, there was a much lower world population than the world population is today, when endangered species, at least of the larger so-called charismatic animals, are actually increasing, and a lot of success stories are there in conservation, despite the animals' rights activists trying all the time to get in the way of the work of good zoos and things like this. They managed to make a good preservations of animals. People stupidly trying to release into the wild, when the wild is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Animals, they don't know if they are in a good zoo or a good collection, or if they are in the wild, and therefore the best way to conserve as animals is to put them into good conditions, in controlled conditions, in captivity. They are not concerned with the fact that they are, that they are not free. Okay, it's not the same as human slavery. Yeah, they don't worry about the fact they don't have a bank account, they don't have the right to vote. They are animals, yes, and so as long as they have the conditions which is necessary for them to live, and they are healthy, they are already happy. If they are breeding, it means they are happy. These animals behind me, these fishes for example here, they don't even live in the wild anymore, most probably. They build a car park in the Mexico over a river where they naturally come from. This is Amicus splendens. But they're here in captivity, and even if I can do it in a single office, keeping a species alive, then of course the zoos can do it, and they are doing it. But these animals, these fishes here, they came from a zoo originally. I got a couple of breeding pairs from the zoo in Plotsk via a zoological broker, and as you see I have a large collection now. It is a nearly 5 years old shoal of these fishes. So it is not about population size, it is about education. If you had 8 billion people on this planet and each of them took responsibility for keeping one species alive, we wouldn't have a problem with extinctions. So let us get away from the idea that we're not going to have children because we're concerned about the future of the planet. Who's going to look after the future of the planet? Maybe you think the lions will do it. They are king of the animals, so maybe they will be looking after the planet. Let's not do it. Let's remove the people from the planet. Let's let the lions be king of the planet, and we see if they're conserving as a species or not. Anyway, that was an aside to people who say, using excuses like ecology, not to have children themselves, when these are the people who are educated, Western people usually, who could be having children and passing on the light of knowledge through the family to these children, making them future responsible citizens. Because in the future we will be needing these citizens. You of all people should be having children, but you're really selfish, pretending to be concerned about the planet, really you thinking, oh, we want to be the dinkies, we want to be the dual income, no kids people. We want to have a bigger property, and it costs money. So I'm getting back to my original theme. How can property be costing more and more if population in Europe going it's not sustainable. When you're going to learn economics in a college or even in a school, you learn in almost first lesson about supply and demand. But whatever economics you are looking at, supply and demand are always going to be necessary to bear in mind. The supply of houses of a certain standard is smaller than the demand, because there is a new wealthy class that all want to be one stage ahead of the others. And so these higher, bigger houses are costing a lot of money. But strangely enough, not only they, but also the lower class housing is also starting to cost a lot more money in most of the Western countries. But you know, it's not going to last forever. One of the reasons why in the United Kingdom prices went up is for the simple reason that banks cynically began to lend more money to people asking for credits for their houses than the people should really have got. The people should not have been able to borrow so much money, but they did get this money because they lie about their income and nobody checks. So what is already happening in the United Kingdom is that people can't afford to pay back their mortgages at the rate of interest which will be applicable in a situation where interest rates rise. For example, I remember not too long ago when you had to pay 15 or 16% of interest per annum, annual percentage rate, on a typical mortgage. Since that time, because of a lot of careful management of money in the economy, largely related to the introduction of monetarism as not only an extreme right-wing policy but as the basic default policy in economics, I'm talking now about macroeconomics, not microeconomics, it has been possible to maintain economies in Europe with much lower rates of both inflation and interest rates than was thought even possible, although it was the aim, in, for example, the 70s and the 80s. And now we are in a situation where even when we have wars on and crises over oil and things like that, we still don't have really much of a problem either with inflation or with the interest rate. However, this stability is undermined by the fact that the house prices are going up to unreasonable levels. They are up to an unreasonable level so that people spend out their money, not money they have now, but money they think they will have in the future, in order to buy bigger houses which set them apart from their neighbors, make them look more rich than their neighbors. Okay, so what is going to happen? I will tell you if you listen carefully. At one point, the banks, sitting amongst themselves, will decide to increase the mortgage rate. And those of you who are on variable rate mortgages will discover that every few months you are paying a little bit more and a little bit more, until finally we are back in a situation like we were a few years ago, where you are really giving 15% per annum interest back to the bank. For many people, this will mean it is not supportable to pay for your home anymore, because already what you're paying out now is difficult for you. And when you're getting, and this is at perhaps 5 or 6%, when you're faced with 15%, many of you will discover you're paying twice as much for your mortgage than you are now. And maybe no pay rise between now and then. How are you going to manage it? You'll be getting extra work in your spare time, really scrimping and saving. You won't be able to send the children to the fee-paying schools. And you'll be finally have to hand back the keys to the building society. Well, if you do this, of course, it is not a good idea. You should always try to sell the property, but when everybody on the market is trying to sell it at once, then the underlying problems, the long-term problems that we have of there being actually too many houses for the population will start to bite you. You will lose on the house. You will probably sell the house. If you bought it recently, you'll probably discover that you're losing about 10% per annum, maybe up to 20%, 25%. And you will discover that in many cases you get the same negative equity problem that was there in 1989. And you'll just have to then pay for this loss over the future years. It's not going to go away unless you declare bankrupt, but then of course you will never borrow again, and that means you will be in rented accommodation as long as you live and not have anything really to show for your work. So basically you have to be a little bit careful. If you are borrowing too much, get ready. Be not spending money on frivolous things, but get ready for have some kind of financial reserve. If you really see it coming that this is going to happen to you, then sell earlier before the market really collapses. And if you want to borrow money now, then just don't borrow more than you can afford. Be a little bit more modest in what you do, especially with the changing interior of the house, because you will never get the money back that you invest into the interior of a house. Only you get back the money which is really invested in the bigger infrastructure and not on this internal style of the house. So be careful how you use your money. It's coming very soon now, a big drop in prices. And I have not told you this before because I knew that it wasn't this close. But right now I can tell you that it is very close that in the United Kingdom there will be a sizable drop in house prices. It has been very overheated, this market, and we are really on the verge of what you would call being the top of the market. You're going to lose a lot of money if you buy a too expensive house today. If you are in a situation where you could either carry on renting, not renting like I'm renting now, but renting in the sense of renting accommodation. If you can carry on renting and making payments just to live in a house without buying it, if you can carry on doing this for a little bit longer, then you know that you'll get much better bargains in a year or two's time than you can get in the market at the moment. So you should carry on just sitting tight and renting your accommodation a little bit longer. Don't buy at the moment. Okay, so this is my advice to you. It is of course advice which I'm not suable for. If you make a decision based on it and it all turns out that you go bankrupt and everything is really horrible afterwards for you, you can sue me for it, because it's like a YouTube rent, not a, you want to get a proper advice, you go to see your accountant, but basically you want to basically bear these things in mind, because you could really over the next few years come a real cropper, as the expression goes, if you make wrong decisions now with regard to the housing market. That's basically my rant for today, aimed mainly I suppose at the United Kingdom, but not only, because it will be the same in a number of other markets where the house prices are too high. If it's not in your country right now, then it will come at some time in the future, because there's always a cycle that works like this, and actually it works very much in favor of the banks, who make a lot of money from foreclosing on mortgages, and that is really one of the reasons why they lend too much, then afterwards they put you in the squeeze on people. They do this quite intentionally. It makes them a big extra profit. And it will happen in a few years' time in many places of Europe. But first I think it will happen in the United Kingdom. Thank you for attention and goodbye.